Well, good
Good.
morning and welcome, everyone. I'm Alison from the Southern Cross Postgraduate Association. Very pleased to see you all here. And for our final workshop with Beck Brown, Postgrad Masterclass on interview skills. Very helpful. Beck's done a series of careers workshops for us, and we will continue our partnership into the new year. In the chat box, I just put there that the recordings will go on the SCU Postgrads YouTube channel. So you can have a look at all the other workshops by Beck and other people, trainers as well. So have a good workshop. I'm going to go off and do some other things. So thanks, Beck.
Thank you, Alison. I'll talk to you next week. Beautiful. All right. So welcome. I'm so glad to have a few of you guys here. That's lovely. If I get to see you, that's even better. So we've got plenty of time. We've got plenty of time here today. I'll keep it pretty informal. So maybe just start by those of you guys here that are live, just type into the chat box. What brought you here? What is it specifically you would like me to focus on? Because generally, or the thing that I've found over the years is that what you're feeling or what motivates you is often what drives other students as well. And also what you share in here about previous experiences, things that are worrying you, things that have worked really well for you. I've had some great students in here over the years that just we had somebody last week which was really wonderful, and just a reminder, just as Alison said, all of the recordings, the Postgraduate Association recordings, they're all available on YouTube. We had there was some fun technical stuff last week, but we had some great student here last week and all the week before who had quite a lot of experience. She was in healthcare in a leadership role, and I love it when you guys share things that have worked really well for you as well. So feel free to jump in and to share anything and ask any questions. Perhaps just start by telling me just in the chat box what brought you guys here along today. And if there's anything in particular you would like me to cover. Oh, that's awesome, Rebecca. I'm so pleased for you. Brilliant. And what's the role that you're going for? How amazing. That actually is not the first time. I was going to say that's really fortuitous, but it's actually not the first time. We've been running these for 2 years now, and we've had a couple of really amazing little intersects where people have come because they've needed something specific, and it's worked really well. Oh, brilliant. And what's the actual role? I'm so glad. Oh, hey, friends, you're here in good time. Awesome. Really glad you're here. So these sessions become all the more poignant when you're specifically working. France and Ghospan and Etcha. Do you mind just typing in the chat box just the course you're doing, anything I can assist you with, anything that brought you here along today, anything you'd like me to specifically focus on. And Rebecca, if there's any kind of areas where you think, okay, I'm really confident in that, but I want to know a little bit more about that. I'll talk about all the common things that come up. And oh, MBA, nice. Final term, great. Awesome, good for you. I think I kind of like almost jump out of my seat with enthusiasm when someone says, which you've just said, is I want to prep myself, because it doesn't matter whether it's the interview component or the cover letter or selection criteria or your resume. The thing about your career, and I think this is one of the things that is not yet really, we're not taught this if you haven't had, embedded career development into your course and you're in perhaps in a different cultural background or left school a long time ago. Your career is yours and it's not your responsibility. That sounds really like your responsibility, but it's yours. And so taking that ownership and knowing, okay, I've got to work on that, or I've got to prep myself. That's it. That's the absolute key to every component. Not making enough money. Then you need to look at, who are the other employers in that sector that pay well, or the other conditions of the work that you're in isn't suitable. Perhaps it's not flexible work, and perhaps you want to have a family. So, MIT. Yeah, nice. I'm following MIT. May I know what the path to get? Yeah, get the part-time related. Yes, I will talk about that. Yeah, great. Some of the other workshops for you, I spent a lot of time on the pathways and career success. So the first workshop that I ran a couple of weeks ago, which is on by the Postgraduate Association, I'm going to send out the slides for all of them. That will be really helpful for you. I probably spent like 3 or 4 hours over the last couple of weeks talking exactly to that point. So it's really, really poignant. But part-time work is one of the keys to achieving that. All right, so let's get started. Before I do, I'd just like to acknowledge and pay my deepest respects to the ancestors, elders, and descendants on the lands upon which we meet and study. I'm mindful that within and without the lands, these lands were always and always will be Aboriginal land. Should have been buildings. Apologies. Okay, so just a little bit of sort of setting. Super duper important if you, for those of you guys, except for Rebecca, that are at that other end, if you're in that prep stage, please have a look at those previous workshops that we ran. Even if you fold the washing, because I know it's just, there's workshops that run all the time that I love to do, but just juggling all the things that we have to do in our lives. So set yourself up, put it on, and then just fold the washing, and then, take some notes. Oh, that's pretty interesting. It might be helpful with my cover letter. Oh, that would be good for my resume, because there's some tips in there, particularly around automatic tracking systems, that are hugely important, and also perhaps are the difference between you getting a job, for example, in 3 months' time or in 12 months' time. So please do that. When you get to the interview stage in your employment progress or application progress, you are, as I was just saying to Alison, you're a long way through through there. But the thing that I have found, particularly in this online setting, and also found in face-to-face settings, is actually this is the area of all the areas where people need the most help. Before we, hospitality management, nice. Ooh, great. Yeah, nice. Thank you. Brilliant. Yeah, in fact, and that's a really nice segue about building interviews. I'm really fortunate, France. I'll probably meet you. I spend a lot of time moonlighting in a few different other arenas, and one of the arenas is in the Faculty of Business, where we may meet. And there's a unit in there called Professional Development for the Workplace. I suspect it's probably still it should come up in your study plan next year, and that is brilliant for exactly what you're just talking about there. So hopefully, I think we run it like maybe term one or term 2 of next year. It's a great unit because it's all of this stuff over 6 weeks. So it's really, you'll find it really helpful. And I love that you're aiming to get a job. The fantastic thing is here in Australia, it's a really buoyant market for hospitality. It's a buoyant market in health, in many, many professions at the moment. So it's probably the best time. I've been around for a little while, and it's one of the 2 most buoyant times for student supply and demand in terms of students. So it's it's a different, difficult, challenging world, etc., etc. However, in the last 12 to 15 years, this is probably one of the 2 times. The last time it was this buoyant, in my opinion, was, I think it was around the early 2000s. So it's a really, really good time to be here in Australia and to be in any of these roles, to be doing an MBA, to be doing hospitality, to be doing psychology, etc. So I'm really stoked that you're here. Also, we've got someone else coming in. Hey, Natalia. Awesome. Welcome. We're just sort of doing a little bit.
I'm
Hi,
so
I'm
sorry for the
You're
late.
fine. It's really normal. We'll probably have a few more that drop in the next hour. You're most welcome.
Thank you.
Just getting started. Just a little bit of. I'm just about to start talking about why the interview happens, and really the segue for that is that by the time you get to the interview phase, yes, you have overcome many, many, many hurdles to get to there, and they're very, like, if you've got an interview, depending on how many stages there are in the interview process for your particular job, they're really looking at how ultimately, if it's the final interview, and again, there's a million variables here, so I'll try to talk as wherever I can, as specific as I can, and as general as I can, so I can cover both. And by the time you get to the interview stage, they're ultimately, if it's that last interview or the first interview, just one interview, they're ultimately looking at how you are going to fit within their team. And they're looking at your interpersonal skills most dominantly. Yes, they want to know, all the technical skills that you have, and all about the projects and your qualification, all that sort of stuff. But ultimately, they're checking how much they really like you and how you're going to get along with the rest of the people. How are you going to fit with their team? And so this is where the practice, because what I see and have seen over the years, and I'll come to the purpose of it, is that students, which is really normal, we become, even if we've prepared, we're still really focused on getting it all right rather than making a connection. And when we're face to face, it's a lot easier to make a connection, with someone. We were just chatting about, face-to-face classes versus online classes. So there's those additional challenges. But having said that, there's still awesome few more coming in. Hello, Janet. Welcome. We're just doing a little bit of kind of intro-y stuff. Really happy to have you here. your capacity to make a connection with them is harder in an online environment, and to keep them engaged. So the purpose of the interview, it's your chance to promote yourself. So you've got to think about yourself as a product. That sounds very kind of clinical. Oh, super duper, more coming in. Awesome. I'm so glad to have so many of you guys here in our face-to-face. We had plenty enrolled, but often we don't get so many live. So I'm really happy to have you guys here live. They want to learn about you. They want to learn about the job, and it's a chance for you to learn learning about the job if it fits your interests and your values. And it's a marketing exercise. So what the employer is looking for is, can you do the job? Will you? And are you the right fit? Okay. Now, the can you do is, they've checked a lot of the can you do already through your, maybe you've had to do some sort of quiz, some sort of case study, some sort of online presentation, that, even before you get to meet with them, you've had to do a cover letter, a resume. A lot of that has been done, but they're still particularly if you've got a couple of stages, they're still checking the skills, the knowledge, and essentially your capacity to talk about those. Will you do the job? This is probably the absolute key. So probably one of my favorite stories, but because it stands out to me most, is that years ago, we used to have a healthcare employer that used to come to classes and talk about roles in their particular industry. And one of the things that they talked about, I'd say to her, it happened 2 years in a row, 2 different staff members. I said to them, what's the most important thing when you interview somebody? And she said, enthusiasm. And I was like, yeah. And then the next year, different staff member said the same thing. And what I want you to know is that they will employ you if you have less experience than if they like you and they can see that you really, really want the job. It seems like a no-brainer, but it's not, because what people are doing when they're going into an interview is they're trying so hard to be that perfect person. And so they're trying to remember everything, and naturally you're going to be really nervous. And so while we're anxious and while we're trying to be perfect and worrying about what somebody thinks of us, we miss that capacity to make a connection with the person that's talking to us. And we almost forget to be present because we're just waiting for the next question. And then I'm going to read through it. And you may not necessarily have your head down, but you're trying, and whether you're face-to-face, I'd say now, depending on the nature of the work, there's a 90% chance, perhaps 85% chance it's going to be online in some capacity. So you must show them enthusiasm. And I heard something wonderful the other day. So good. Someone's popping in and out. Something wonderful the other day. One of the professionals in my field was being interviewed on a podcast, and they were a psychologist. There's some people in my arena are both psychologists and in the career space. And she talked about that we need to show when we're doing this with the looking for what employers want. They want to trust, they want trust when they're meeting us, and they want to make sure that you're fit. and they're going to employ someone that's going to fit if they think you have the right values, motivations, and that comes by there being connection and that trust. So this guest speaker, this psychologist coach, said something wonderful, that in the first couple of minutes, you need to show your hands. Anyone like to guess why you need to show your hands in the first couple of minutes? I'd say first 2 minutes. Yeah, yep, you're on the right track. Yep, you look more calm. Yep, definitely more calm. Yes, calm and confident. So she actually drew it back to some of the innate things about human beings and how we're wired for, by nature, we know that if we get anxious, we're essentially animals. Yeah. And so by showing hands really early on, we show they can actually see that we're not, it was really interesting. I'm probably not explaining it very well, but that we're not a threat and that you can be trusted. And I thought about that and I was like, yes, because we do practice, and I'd love for you guys, maybe we'll take a break and let you guys, if you want to, pop your cameras on and have a look at practicing a little bit if you want. We'll see how you guys go. I did try to get people to put their cameras on before. I know it can be hard because you're like, oh, I'm in my bedroom, I'm in my jammies, didn't want to come in here and do anything. And so by showing our hands early on, it shows that immediate, that you can be trusted. But just to scoot down a little bit, some of you guys are going to go into graduate because somebody's going into hospitality, somebody's going into psychology. There are a range of different interview types. Now, my experience over the last couple of years looking at what's happening in this space is that it used to be much more, it was a slower, more consistent and measured approach about the whole interview process. It was like, as an organization, we do it this way. And but now it's kind of loosey-goosey without sounding like the whole world is unprofessional. It's changed. And why I'm pulling faces is that feedback from people is that expect the unexpected. So, for example, you may be told it's a panel interview and it's just a chat, all right, for example. And that's a common, and I'll talk about what a panel interview is in a minute, but the phrase, it's just a chat, don't be fooled ever by anybody that wants you to think it's just a chat. It's not just a chat. It is just a chat, but it's a chat. Oh no, they've overshared this, or they've bagged their employer or whatever. So a panel interview, and some of you guys will maybe be familiar with that, will be 2 or 3, a group, not likely to be any more than 4, 2 or 3 people. Obviously a lot more challenging. It may be a series of interviews and the final one is with a panel. So it could be that you have some sort of something online you need to do, then a panel interview, then an individual interview. So for example, I was speaking to somebody recently that was a fairly senior role, had a panel interview, then followed by an interview with the CEO. That one was a not-for-profit organisation, but it was a more senior role. So just be prepared for any And don't assume, just because you previously went for a job in New South Wales Health and this was the process, and then 6 weeks later I'm still going for another job in New South Wales Health. The landscape of everything in the employment market, in the world of work, it just changes like never before. So just my top tip for any part of this process is read all the instructions, check everything, and expect the unexpected. And then just prepare as best you can for whatever version it can be. Interview is video is also, it may be there's a million variables of this. You might be given a series of questions. You may or may not be given time to prepare. You may be given time, like within that time period, you can log on between this time and this time. You may also be asked to create, this is becoming more common, as one of the stages of the interview process, you might be asked to make a video of yourself, 5 minutes or 2 minutes. And then a lot of the principles of what I'll talk about soon will make sense. If you happen to be going for a competitive role, like something in psychology, for example, graduate positions in accounting, government, New South Wales, maybe local government, certainly state, federal government roles. There might be for like competitive graduate positions. There may be assessment centres. For corporates, highly attractive corporates like the KPMGs of the world, not that perhaps that a few of those organisations, actually the top 6 or 7 of them, got a really bad reputation right at the moment. But interestingly enough, it's slid out of the arena for information about these organisations. An assessment centre, really quickly, it will not apply to the majority of you. They're less likely, but they're for when the role is really, really competitive and they want to have the maximum time. It's a very expensive process. Again, probably happens a lot less now with COVID or post-COVID because they're often done on site. But they still do happen for competitive roles. But again, it's a small percentage. But just in case you do one, sometimes it's a full day. We've done simulated versions at the university. Engineering is one of the fields, if you happen to be listening at home, that may be, and it could be psychology, it could be social work, could be nursing, no. You will have a series of activities to do over the day. What I would suggest, because I won't spend a whole lot of time on it, because I'll talk to the main things that you're most likely to have. The main thing that I would say, if you have to do an assessment centre, follow every single instruction. So we had our top students, just as an example, a few years ago, engaged in an assessment centre from the beginning to the end, and we found that less than 50% of the top students actually followed all the instructions. And that's not a criticism. I'm not saying it to criticise them. I'm saying it. So follow. We were just really, really surprised that even our top students, because with an assessment centre, there are a series of instructions that you're going to get. And I think it's just the nature of life now. We have so much information coming through, and we're pulled into, WhatsApp and all that sort of stuff, all those different platforms. But what I would say, my top tip with any of this, if you're going on site, whether you're going to an assessment centre, whether you've got a face-to-face interview, is that imagine from the minute they can see you, and that's like probably 20 Ks down the road, because if you're tailgating someone on your way to the interview, it's likely to be the person that's going to be interviewing you. Or if you're like looking in the mirror as you go up the lift, it's going to be the admin lady that's going to come. And I'm laughing because these things do happen. It's going to be the admin lady that's going to be sitting there and she's going to go, oh. And what does the admin lady have to do with it? Their call decision. And there's nothing wrong with looking at yourself in the lift before you go up. but more if you were like, on the phone going, is that they are what we call decision influencers. So you must be very aware that anybody else in that recruitment process, another employee, the assistant, anyone around is what we call a decision influencer. I'm going to talk more about all of this. In fact, I might give you a little activity to do. I can see no cameras on, so I won't pressure you. But what I would say, more than anything in the whole world that you could do for the next 3 months, 6 months, however long it is, until you have to go online, is turn that camera on. I won't make you do it today because it's not my job to make you uncomfortable, but it is my job to challenge you to get comfortable. And the only way to do that is you've got to show up. And you've got to show up when you get into that workplace. You've got to show up to a meeting. And I was just talking to someone that employs graduates at this, I won't say the name of the organisation in Sydney, and she was saying that she's mentoring a group of interns, and she said they don't turn their cameras on. She said, how are they going to get promoted? How are they going to get seen? Because if you're working from home, you have to be seen. So you have to go to a staff meeting. If you want to do well, you've got to get that camera on. So I love you all. Pop your cameras on next time from your classes. Also, I've got a group of students that I teach in another unit, and I've got a guy that comes every week and he turns his camera on. And I tell you what, I get to engage with him. I get to see, and I have a completely different, professional image of him than I do of the others, because I get to see his body language. I get to see him communicating. And so get comfy with the uncomfortable, because that will be more important than any practice in the whole world that you can do. You just get used to looking at yourself in here. And I'll talk a lot about some of the things that I would suggest that I've seen over the years of all the do's and don'ts. But let's have a little look at the, because there's some really, really, and I'm laughing, some really, really important do's and don'ts that you don't know what you don't know. But I'm so conscious that if I never get to see you guys again, that I give you all of the things that I've collated in my brain over the years of, oh my God, I wish everybody needs to know that. Okay, so what I want you to do, I'm going to maybe I'll put some music on my phone. We've had some funky things going on with technology in here, so I'll pop some music on for you on the phone. I want you to imagine that you're going for, and I'll give you a few minutes to do this. I want you to imagine your ideal next job. Quickly do a Google search of something if you don't know what that is. And then I want you to think, why are you here? So it might be, just as I think it was Francis said, here to gain parts, I'm studying a hospitality degree, really excited to get into the profession. I know that by undertaking a part-time job with an esteemed organisation such as the Hilton, that will help me propel my career. I would love to have the opportunity to work with your organisation whilst I study. The theory to practice, I'll be able to bring in things that I'm learning from my studies into the part-time job, etc., etc. Don't worry, if that sounds overwhelming, I just want you to think about any next job, there must be something coming or something you would like to do, because you are motivated enough to show up here with me, and I feel really honoured, live on a Friday morning. And there's something you want. So let's do that. What can you do for us? Now, you may think at this stage, I don't know, I've just started. You will already, if you're an international student, you've got resilience. you've known how to overcome great hurdles. If you're a mature age student, you've already got wonderful work experience. Doesn't matter whether you worked 5 years ago and you took time off to have children. You will have some sort of leadership skills from sport. You will have, or from community work, part-time job, coaching the kids at school. You will have so many things that you have already done. And I unpacked a lot of what could go into your resume, go into your cover letter, and into each of these elements last week. But I still know that, you guys may or may not do that. So I want you to spend a little bit of time thinking about what you can do. Just imagine what that job is. What could you do for them? Then what kind of person are you? So what would your lecturers say? What would your mother say? What would your partner say? What would your bestie say? What would your mentor say? What would your part-time job boss say? What would your auntie and uncle at home in Taiwan, what would they say? What are your best assets? And the thing at the moment there's this intersect, which is why I find it a really exciting time on the planet. There's this great intersect between both the science around human beings and around our strengths, and also psychology. And so one of the areas is that they're really studying human beings, what we call character strengths. So there's an amazing study that's done by beacharacterstrengths.org, I think it is. And it just put via character strengths in there. There's a free survey that you can do to help you get comfy. You might not want to do it now because it takes about 20 minutes. It's free. There's a lot of different disciplines and people using that, but it looks at it. It will help you if you're not comfy with who you are. And it's really normal. The only people that are comfortable with who you are, which I quite like about them, at first it used to really annoy me, is the Americans. They're actually culturally much better at, or they can be really with no express to the Americans. I'm fortunate to be involved with them. Is that they're really comfortable with talking about who they are. Australians are not so good. And there's that level you don't want to be bragging, and you don't want to undersell. What I find most of the time is we undersell ourselves, and we're not comfy with who we are and what we can bring. And that leads to that next question: what distinguishes you from other people where you're interviewing? And again, it's really poignant in the kind of well-being, personal, professional development, mental health, psychology, that whole intersect around, we see all these, Instagrammers or whatever, and we all want to be the same. And in fact, our true beauty and our value to the planet and to other people and to work is actually our individuality. So what distinguishes you? And start to learn about that and get comfy with that, so you can write about it in your cover letter, write about it in your resume, and then talk about it in a way that is not big noting. It's just, this is what I can bring, this is what I can contribute, and if they don't like it, find someone else. A bit like like some sort of employment dating. And can I afford you? Now, this is a tricky one. I would suggest that you find out, as best you can, before you get in the interview, whether, I reckon, kind of without sounding like really being really annoying, but you want to know if they can afford you. Okay. What we do is we give it's a buyer's market in terms of employees at the moment. And of course, if you're just a graduate, I say just a graduate, but you're not middle or further up in your career. But you also don't want to start too low and undervalue yourself, so then you've got further to climb. And then also, people will respect you for how much you respect yourself, essentially. So I'd like you to spend don't worry about the can I afford you bit. I want you to have a go at thinking about why you're there. So if you're going for that psychology role, you've spent X number of years, working in a previous profession, you've been studying this, you've been working at Lifeline, whatever else, you've had some sort of placement, or you haven't, you've been focused on your research, etc., etc. And you're really excited to get into the profession. I'm not going to put words in your mouth. And then what can you do? That would be, and that may be a little bit harder depending on, if you just started, but think about, you can aim it towards a part-time job or a volunteering job, depending on where you're up to, and then your personal attributes. So I'm going to play you a tune. I'm going to give you 8 minutes. I don't want to give you too long so you go away and they're like, oh, nice. Thank you. Yeah, great question. Thank you, Aileen. We have a lot of international students that come into these workshops. In fact, today is probably the first time we've had, we've got quite a few, still got more of a balance, but predominantly in our postgraduate, the ones that, it's not entirely true, but I'd probably say maybe 70-30 in terms of who comes. And that's postgraduate students. So things to think about as a postgraduate student. Think about everything, all those skills you had to, and I talk to this point all the time now because this is what employers are starting to wake up to. Think about all the skills you had to use to get here, all right? Also, if you haven't done any work here in Australia yet, which is often common because there's psychological barriers, there's also cultural barriers, there's language barriers initially, and then there's barriers that all these sort of other barriers that tend to get in the way because a friend took ages for them to get a job or whatever it is. So think about all the skills that you had to gain to. And also, if you're a postgraduate student, same, doesn't matter if you're international or domestic, you had to use a whole lot of tenacity and resilience to get into postgraduate study and to complete a university degree before, but to get organised, to travel to the other side of the world. Holy heck. And so that demonstrates to me commitment, drive, able to work really strongly towards a goal. As I said, tenacity, a willingness to overcome hurdles. The list just goes on and on. And finally, employers, some do recognise, the multicultural, but bigger organisations are now absolutely shifting towards understanding how the more diverse our teams are, the more different perspectives we have, the more thriving an organisation can be. So that's no longer just about quotas. There's still work to be done. Does that help? And then also, if you did any other work, I often find that students, whether they've come from Korea, Sweden, or Hong Kong, they really undervalue the work that they've done overseas. And I can understand that because, there is truth in it, but it's not all of the truth. So you just want to make sure that how you frame it, don't undervalue that experience. Treat it for what it is. It's relevant work experience. And so if you work for a not-for-profit at home, if you volunteered, if you worked in a family business at home, or your country of origin, does that help?
Hello.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, can I ask you one more question?
Oh, please do. I love it when you ask questions because I want to hear your voices and I want to know what's going on for you and I want to help.
I am a student who's studying master's year, and
Yes.
Back home, I work in marketing, and I used to run my small business.
Oh, a small business?
Yes.
Yes.
So putting these things up, like from the way that you're telling, these are the qualities the employers are
Yes.
actually looking for. I think I've kept it all in my CV as well as my cover letter, but still, I'm not finding any luck on finding jobs.
Yes.
Yeah, so just even applying for jobs in marketing or anything related to it, uh, just companies before even bringing me for an interview to just turn me down. So that's
Yeah. Look, and I hear what you're saying. I would love to have is it Aylin?
yes,
Yes. Aylin, I've got time to do one-on-ones, and I would love, because there's a lot to unpack there, because yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So I'm happy to make a time with you to talk about all of that if you'd like, because one of the things so you're doing an MBA, is that right?
yes.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things, and what year are you in?
This is just my first term.
Okay, cool. All right. And so and then you had work, yeah. So there's a few things. What I would suggest as a segue is to, and are you based on the Gold Coast?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Well, all of that's great. I love that you're here talking now in your first year, and I love that you're on the Gold Coast. Not because there's anything better with wherever, but you're in a place where there's employment opportunities, and so both of those are fabulous. And so one of the biggest challenges, particularly if we're not studying the same degree from another, just really quickly, and then you and I can make a time to chat, is that when you're not studying the same thing and then you've got experience from another country, being able to translate that and then find suitable work doesn't always happen immediately. So it can be a bit of a process. So, for example, there's a few years ago, I worked with a group of postgraduate Indian students, and they all had great jobs in India in tourism. And then it just took a bit of time, like 6 to 12 months, of where they just had to kind of they had to take different roles. And this is doesn't just happen to international students. It happens when people finish their degrees. Initially, sometimes they have to go, and again, that sounds like, oh, really? And it sounds like I'm contradicting myself. But you sometimes have to go, just take it a little, so you have to perhaps get something to get in, just get a foot in the door, then it translates, then you get that Aussie-based experience, and then you can kind of tweak it and then move into, then you're able to draw in that specific marketing experience, if that makes sense. And also some disciplines, like marketing, for example, it can be very, Australia can be, and it's the same for other industries as well, they can be very Australian centric with the type of experience. But it doesn't mean, so if I use the example of those 3 Indian boys, they've all now, they're doing brilliantly. One's almost, I don't know how many years later, 6 years later, maybe a little bit longer, he's like a couple of jumps from the top in Queensland tourism. The other one is the general manager of a property in Tasmania, and the other one works at the uni in recruitment. And all of them just had this kind of, and I use them as an example, but they just had this kind of funky period where they were just having to sort of get, so for example, the guy that's a general manager down in Tasmania, he actually, it sounds awful, but I'll talk about it another time, is that he started in the pancake shop and nobody wants to start in the pancake shop, but he was only in the pancake shop really briefly. And then, off he went. So, but Aylin, I'd love to have the time to help you specifically with that.
Okay,
Is that-
thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. All right.
Lots of work with you as well.
So can I hear, I'd love to hear any of you guys. Aylin, what I would describe about you, just something that, just that I can see, is that you're courageous, you're gutsy. You've just put your hand up here and asked for what you want. That, if I'm an employer, that's who I want to employ. I want to employ someone that's gutsy enough to say, this is what I want. How do I get there? And so there's something, that you may not have known about yourself, that you come along to this class. We've got 5,000 students that are postgraduate students that probably receive this email, and you've come on in here and asked what you want. So, and ask those questions about how to get forward. And if you're in a business setting, that's what, if we were doing an informal, if this was an assessment center and I had to watch people's behavior in here, I'd be like, I want to know more about Aylin. Yeah. So, so what kind of person are you? Who'd like to share some of the things that have come to mind when you think about what sort of person you are?
I guess I would say I'm a tenacious person who's always been in a leadership role, as well as I'm really curious. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I like reading a lot of things, even though it's not related to the subject or goals that I'm walking in,
Yeah.
trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And yeah, I love being social with people. I love listening to them, to their problems, so that we can come up with a solution. And plus I'm more what you call it, efficiency based. If it's not efficient, it doesn't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I just try to achieve more efficiency as the process just goes on, even if I need to take any hard measures, if I want to, or like if it's needed.
Brilliant. Thank you for sharing. And you've actually raised another really wonderful point. So one of the things that employers actually say that they want is curiosity. Actually curiosity. Because people that are curious, is that they're open because they want to learn. And so one of the top things employers want is people that are curious but willing to learn, because the world of work is just, I can't even describe to you how much it's changed even post-pandemic. I've never seen the world of work change like it has. Well, actually pretty much from 2020. The minute the pandemic started, the whole world of work just flipped on its head. And it's not going to change in terms of it was like, if you imagine this old machine that was going, and then something slots in there that changes the world, and it ain't going back. There's no going back. And so how that relates to curiosity is that if you've got a good sense of humor, oh, that's interesting. Right. So brilliant. Thank you. I can't see, a couple of points are coming up here, but I'm not seeing where they're going. Why? They're not showing in there. All right. Anybody else? Does anyone else feel comfy to share like what's come up for them just having these little conversations? I'd love anybody to pop their mic on. People will listen to this, but they won't, they're going to see me. They're going to judge anyone. They're going to judge me. Anyone want to share? Etya, Francis, Gosman, Natalia, Janet, Rebecca. Any comments? Can I get you guys to type in then for me? Type in. I just want to see 2 or 3 words that describe you, because you can use those words and expand on those words and then find additional words that relate to those words to put in your cover letter, your resume, and preparing for the interview. And one of the questions that everybody hates the most, or not everybody, but the majority of people, is the bit that happens right as you come in when you're going to have to show your hands, is they're going to say, tell me about yourself. And you've been like preparing all, you've been talking about all your clinical skills and the marketing plan you've done and all the problems you've solved in business, but don't ask me who I am. Ouch. Who are you? Aylan's just done a great job of sharing who he is, with curiosity and a sense of love of learning, openness. Oh, yes, Edna, please.
Hello. I personally kind of low-key love that question.
What's that? Say that again, sorry.
The question of tell me about yourself. As
Yes.
someone who's, because like I've done recruitment for a while now. Although
Yes.
I'm doing my MBA, I've been doing a
Yes.
lot of hospitality management. So one of my roles is to recruit people. So I always ask that question, tell me about yourself. And so from that perspective, I've grown to like that question because it has given me better insight of, the kind of people I would like to add to my team. And then therefore, because I've seen how they answer it, then I kind of try to answer it accordingly. So I've realized you kind of have to personalize it. At any role, you answer that question, personalize it, but make sure that you emphasize the skills and the qualities that you have that you feel would work towards that role. It isn't just, I'm from so-and-so and I love to knit and go to the beach. I've had that happen many times. And I love that you have hobbies, but what can you bring? What is it that makes you stand out amongst, the different hundreds of candidates that I might have, type thing. So so I see the value in the question. It's annoying, but I see the value in it.
Oh, me too. So tell me, I love it. I always find, well, not every single workshop, but I always have people like yourself that have got incredible experience that I'd love. And also you just, you just share stuff that and just add so much value. Could you tell me, please, what do you love to hear? You love it to be personalized, but what's really lit you up when you've heard people answer that question?
I'll give a recent example. I was so there was someone who was applying for a barista role. And then I asked that question, tell me a bit about yourself. And like you'll have, your usual, they'll just talk about their personal things, but not so much. But then there was this one person who didn't have much experience in coffee, but was saying, I can't remember exactly, but something about how, so they were talking about, great, so I'm so-and-so, I have project management experience, but throughout that time, I've kind of become obsessed with coffee and therefore have been researching a lot and have done some barista training so that way I could get into it. And like, I kind of liked how they were able to mesh the three together, and you could tell how passionate they really were about it, that even though they didn't have the experience, they had the willingness, which I feel is really important in any position. If you're gonna like willingly upskill outside work, for the role that you're working towards, even if you may not have the experience up here, but by even demonstrating that you're willing to put in the effort that you are going to outsource. So I don't know, I feel that it really demonstrates the kind of qualities that you can then put through in your position in the company.
Beautiful. I think that's an incredible example, because you can see actually that it's the love of coffee, and like, who's not going to employ someone in a barista role that has a love of coffee? Because we know that sadly many people that are coffee, they want to be rock stars, or they want to be someone, they want to be something other than making coffee. And
Yeah.
so you want somebody that's going to live and breathe coffee. So I think that that's a really beautiful example. And I also think, I also love that you raised how they enmeshed, you know, the two worlds, because also, you know, project management still needs to happen in a coffee shop. You know, you've got a function that's going on, and you need those project managers. But more importantly, that he or she was able to draw that connection between their past life, but then where the interest and the purpose of why they're, you know, if it's Francis about, you know, or France about wanting to get into hospitality, where is that born from? And that story, because people love stories, don't they? And really, you got a story rather than a yeah.
Definitely, like a level of storytelling, it feels important, but just being able to recognize the skills that you have and how they can be transferable. Like with was it Alan, the one wanting to get into hospitality? Even if they don't have hospitality experience, if they're able to somehow transfer skills of their previous role, whether it be volunteering, whatever, in any aspect to it, they'll get their foot into the door. And like, and I've had to recognize that myself as someone who's been only in hospitality. I'm trying to get into, you know, different sectors. So I'm trying to figure out ways of how I can display that, hey, I know that I've been in this industry, but they are very transferable to this position. And like, and I think it's important to be able to recognize that in interviews.
Beautiful. And in fact, you've raised a really interesting point, because this is one of the contradictions, is that employers want transferable skills. They understand transferable skills, but they also need to be told this is a transferable skill. So that might sound that sounds a bit like, huh? But actually spelling things out for them. And I hadn't ever really thought of how of actually saying this transfers into that. I always talk about, you know, transferable skills, like this is, you know, I use these, but actually saying this transfers into, you know what I mean? Like, because also it happens a lot in a resume, is that students have all these transferable skills, but they don't have the right job titles and things. And you've kind of been almost given me just an extra bit that we almost, because employers are in a hurry and they know the job titles they want and they know what they're looking for. But we also know that they miss things, and we also know that they want particular transferable skills. But so there's this kind of like this weird vortex where they're falling into. The employers know they want this, but then they need it spelled out to them, so they don't quite reach them. And then students aren't good enough at articulating it enough. So there's this place where employers aren't quite getting the people that they want, and employees aren't quite getting the jobs they want, if that makes sense. So thank you. And that's why I really encourage you guys to speak up for anything that you want to add, or because I get so many ideas of I hadn't really thought. I'm going to be doing this a long time, about that vortex there. You know, we talk transferable skills all the time. Yeah. But actually drawing those linkages orally for them is brilliant. The only thing that we have to be really careful of, and I heard it ever so slightly in the way in your voice, and I guess it's very normal, is because we have perhaps those vulnerabilities, is that we have to not give away any sense that it may or may not be immaculately worthy and sensational. Does that make, because I heard you kind of almost like said, it's not, like you said something the way you said, I was like, oh, hang on. It is perfect. It is all that hospitality experience that you have is absolutely worthy of whatever. There are so many things that hospitality sets you up for. It sets you up for healthcare, emergency departments, airline industry, being on a plane, being at the counter of the, being in the actual airport, any situation where, just about any setting, retail, project management, a call center, leadership roles, because hospitality is unpredictable. It's dynamic, it's demanding. You have unexpected incidences all of the time. You have to manage people's emotions as well as having those technical skills as well. So hospitality is an incredible, and retail, McDonald's, Target, Woolworths, Big W, are brilliant for setting you up for any career, because it gives you those employability and those transferable skills around, because there are so many other professions that don't expose you or require that you use those skills. So if you're in an admin role, you're not having to, you can sort of got that time to think, whether you're sitting in the office or whatever. But if you're on the front line and you've got someone yelling at you, particularly in the world that we're in, I was saying in another class yesterday that hospitality is a really difficult, it's difficult for customers, but it's also really difficult for staff. So thank you so much for sharing. You're going to be amazing in anything you do.
Thank you.
No, you will, because again, like, you've spoken up, you've shared your experience, you've added value, and that's what employers want, is that they want to see the value of your contribution, which is back here. They want to know, like, if we're going to employ you, what's going to distinguish you? What value? What are you going to bring? Why are you here? What are you going to bring to us? And that hospitality is something, experience is that just is one example of something that you're going to bring. And we haven't even got started on things that you've done at uni, any workshops you've attended, or any other work that you've done, and things you've done with your family and your friends and your community and your sport and your volunteering, or any variation of. I would say over the last couple of years, since the pandemic, I've been doing mock interview sessions in here, in this online space, and also working with postgraduate and undergraduate students as they prepare videos. So I'm going to give you the things that I see done really well, and the things, but we'll start with the blunders. An obvious one is the not preparing. Short, close responses, that's actually more common. Like, if I hadn't had these last couple of years of doing mock interviews and prep, is that more commonly people say less than they say too much. But it's tricky, because I know in here, if I don't shake it up enough, we're all used to watching 1-minute Instagram videos. And so, but also, when you do a mock interview, when you answer an interview question and you just go, blah, 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 they're just kind of like, tell me a bit more. So we're going to talk more about that in a minute, about examples that we need to hear. Inappropriately dressed. This is actually more common than what I would have thought. Again, in the last couple of years in these mock interview setting, you don't need to be dressed in a necessarily in a jacket, but I would say no hoodies. Even if it doesn't matter what cultural background you're from, I would say for everybody, don't show, just out of courtesy and respect for whoever is going to be the other person on the other end of the screen, is to cover up. And then normal things around, how much jewelry, piercings, all those sorts of things. It is actually more common than what I would have expected, in terms of, I generally find people are underdressed. This is your professional identity, and this is kind of like a ding-a-ling-a-ling moment. You've got to remember that even after you get that job, when you turn up to those staff meetings, people are judging you, because that's all they're going to see of you. So once every now and again, you can turn up in your tennis gear if you're meeting once a week. But if you're the graduate and you've got a weekly meeting and you're in and I see it every other day of the week with various different staff meetings, and if you're not hanging, if they don't get to see you in the office when you're dressed and going to, you know, meet with a client or whatever, and the only exposure that they have for you, and I know this is about interviews, but it's also about building a professional identity. If that's the only time they're going to see you, it's not going to help you get a promotion. It's one thing to be relaxed, and people will remember you for it, in terms of even if they only meet you once, and you've got your camera like it's like this, and you're in the car and you're like that, and okay, you're having a bad day, but own it, you know, say, I'm so sorry, you know, should be here, you know, whatever, because you may not get that next interview for that job. It's pretty simple. You just want head and shoulders, and I'll talk quite a lot, oddly enough, I'll talk quite a lot about that, because that's all they're going to see of you. Poor communication, we'll talk about bad mouthing. I don't see many people do that. What I most commonly see, particularly for everybody's vulnerable, I think, and everybody has vulnerabilities when it comes to interviews. It doesn't matter whether it's a CEO. I really lucky to work with all kinds of every shape and form of student, you know, person that's going for work. Everyone has vulnerabilities, and so what we do is that, or my observation is that, we're so anxious about that vulnerability that we kind of bring it up, and whether it's through something in the way that we say it, or what commonly happens, particularly for postgraduate students, undergraduates, I found that postgraduates tend to do it a little bit more. And certainly people, our international students, do it most commonly, is that people do it in their cover letters less, but actually what they do is they, I think they're just trying to be honest, is they say, I don't have experience in this, or they draw attention to it somehow with some other language. So here is one of my biggest ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling moments, is you've got to let that stuff go, and you have to focus on everything that you do have, everything, and get comfy with everything that you do have. Put aside what you don't have, and don't tell them don't indirectly tell them about something that you're worried about, because what often happens, and I know because I've done it myself, and I've worked with even you know, other professionals in this arena, we'll like chuckle, and we're like, I didn't have that, and I somehow told them. So don't tell them what you're most worried about. Like perhaps, so for example, recently, super duper amazing student, and he hadn't quite finished his degree, and I wasn't actually coaching him, but his mum brought some stuff to me. Brilliant student, and when I say brilliant student, not because he's you know, he did really well at uni, all the rest of it, but brilliant in that he'd worked in the family cafe, and had, you know, spent a lot of time working. He had a part-time job, and so he had, and that's what I mean by a brilliant student. And then he hadn't quite finished his degree, and his mum said to me, he keeps going, he gets all the way to the end, but he hasn't finished his studies. And I said to her, I wonder if he's like somehow worrying about that. Can you have a chat to him and find out? Bingo, Ringo. I think it was within a couple of weeks, and she messaged me and said, you know, super proud, super excited. And I was like, yes, because he rocks. It doesn't matter that he's only 2 weeks, but we know, because, you know, if we're studying, you know, we care, we're, you know, wanting to do well, and we're wanting to be perfect, and we wanted to have it all perfect and everything perfect. And the employer doesn't care if you're finishing in 1 term or 2.5 terms. If they like you, they see your enthusiasm, they can see all those other transferable skills, they can see you fitting with their team, they believe you are who you are, they're going to employ you. The following up point here, this is a funny one. Yes, absolutely follow up. I used to have a higher sense of you know, its impact on whether you get the job or not. Sadly, communication now has become a lot more transactional, in that what used to happen, it was much more formal. Like, you know, it depends on the job type of organization, but it used to be very formal. Like, you'd apply for a job and they'd say, thank you for your application, blah, blah, blah. And there was all these very clear communication channels. Now, there's just too many different ways to communicate with people, not enough staff, people are time poor. There's different formalities around communication. Yes, absolutely follow up, but absolutely, I would never say not follow up, but don't necessarily assume because you follow up, then that's going to have any bearing or impact on whether you get the job or not. Juries, I kind of changed my feeling around all that. Let's do a quick quiz actually before, and then we'll just take a quick break. I've got lots of other super duper important things to share with you. So what do we reckon? Just type into the chat box. Should we be better to be overdressed or underdressed? True or false? You can just put a T or an F in there. Yes, absolutely. I think I've just made that point. I had an example that I would never, ever, ever forget. And won't spend ages talking about it, but I'd come back from the Middle East, very formal dress attire. Went to a regional research centre for some work, and didn't scout. Whenever it was, like 20 years ago, but never forget it. Didn't scout and see what everyone else was wearing. Turned up very, you know, head to toe suit. Boss turned up, head of the research centre, no shoes, or maybe had thongs on. Anyway, turns up and he goes, "G'day." And I was like, oh, this is embarrassing. However, I tell you what, if I turned up in my thongs, I would have been 10 times more embarrassed and I'm much less likely to get the job. So my suggestion is go more formal than even what they're wearing when you have a look at their website. And then always just make a bit of an effort, especially if you're online in hybrid, or if you only go into the office, which may be most likely a couple of times a week. You don't have to go in a 3-piece suit, but just spend an extra 10 minutes so that you build that and maintain that professional identity that Claire or Susanna or Ali or Carla, Carrie, whoever it is, always they consistently dress to a certain standard. Okay, is it first 90 seconds of the interview are largely impact how successful you're going to be? True or false? We're kind of true. Yes, absolutely. This is the same. This is the same in an online, and in fact, almost in an online, I would say the bar's even like it could be 30 seconds because they can see whether you've bothered just with the basic stuff, making sure the lighting's right, making sure that the camera angle that you can see, head and shoulders, that they're groomed. But lighting is a huge one, and the quality of the camera that you're using. Sounds silly, but can they hear you? Just start with, can they hear you? Can they see you? Have you done your hair? And is your, are you appropriately dressed? You can just immediately, you can go into so that can actually, because when you're walking in, there's more for them to sort of assess you on in terms of, because, And then of course, in that first 90 seconds, your small talk in an online setting is more important than the small talk. Like the small talk is super duper duper important in the online. Better to talk about a technical area of weakness than a personality issue. Whoa. Yeah, you want to talk about, definitely better to talk about a technical area, which kind of really highlights the value of those interpersonal skills that we have. we get so driven in our careers, and this is where it can get really tricky and very frustrating for some people that are really good at, you know, learning all the software and learning all the programs and following all the policies and the procedures, but then they don't get promoted. And it can become a real point of frustration, because somebody that can't necessarily do all the technical programs, but they're really good at those soft skills around persuasion, engagement, motivating others, etc. And it can become a real point of tension. So, but those personality issues, our capacity to cooperate, to get along with others, to be open, to take feedback, those things they're equally, I was going to say of more value, but they are critical, because it doesn't matter whether you're working, and particularly now, it doesn't matter whether you're working in IT or in, you know, the emergency department. You still have to get along and respond appropriately to others, and that's, you know, who you are as a human being. Okay, referring to pre-written answers during the interview, during an interview is a good idea. True or false? Yeah, I generally say, oh yeah. Someone had their hand up. I would definitely say, if you're like going for a really, you know, like a 1 hour interview with, you know, Queensland Health or something, you could take some notes, definitely, but don't pre-read anything. I would say rehearse, but also you don't want to sound like, even if you've rehearsed something, and I've seen this working with, particularly with, you know, nurses and midwives, they've got it all down around putting cannulas in and the examples of the problems they've solved and all the rest of it. Fabulous. But just remember, most importantly, you got to build that trust and that rapport with them. Okay, is it better not to ask any questions at the end of an interview rather than asking one or two? Oh, it's not better. Yeah, it is definitely better. So just have a couple of questions. The quality of the questions is really important. So just, yeah, it's better to ask, definitely. Yeah. But what I find when I've done mock interviews with students is that they generally always ask about money and training. I kind of leave both of them aside. You want to show, like the barista example, you want to ask them about, you know, what type of coffee they're using. Ask them what their favorite, I don't know, coffee style is, or what do commonly, you know, so if we go with the coffee example, you know, what is the most popular coffee? Because, you know, different areas might be. So, for example, in Casuarina, I found out about the Magic, particular type of coffee. I'm sure Edna might know what that is. But then I go up to the bakery and they don't know what a Magic is. Yeah. And the bakery is only up the road, you know, a couple of blocks. So what sort of customer, what sort of coffee is your favorite? You know, what are we predominantly serving, or what's your favorite? You know, something. But then also, you know, how many, in the things to do with the team, something to do with the organization, how long the business has been operating, where they're heading, what the vision, what the mission is. What would I be expected to do? You know, what is the induction process like? Who would I be reporting to? Anything to do with, yes, Francis, question. Yes, please, just jump in.
Hi, sorry, I really couldn't turn on my mic a while ago because there's construction going on in the house. But anyway, I'm curious regarding the questions. What are the questions we should ask, and what are those that we shouldn't avoid asking that would turn off the interviewer?
Yeah, definitely. So the two things that I would stay away from, which are the two things that when I do mock ones, are the two things that students always ask. Stay away from money, because you can figure that out. There'll be a time and a place to talk about money. They'll bring the money up. Or when you apply for the job, you can actually put your settings in. If you're going through Seek, you can actually put in what your benchmark, I want it between this much and this much. So you know that, okay, it's going to fall in that mark. Let them roll with the money bit. Be ready to talk money if they want to talk about it, but don't bring up money. Don't bring up training. Everybody wants to know, they want to know when they're going to get the training in Sweden. And then they also want to know when they're going to get the other person that's interviewing them, get their job. So stay away from those tender kind of areas, because the person that is interviewing you may be wanting to get your job. And so just avoid those sorts of things. Think about the role, about the team, about the organization. They're the things that I would focus on, and steer clear of money and training. I know that that's what we all want, money and doing better, and how we're going to, you want to focus. The biggest mistake in the whole process, that one of the big mistakes I see people make, is they're focusing on what can I get from this. You want to think about, what can I contribute? What can I contribute? What can I bring? And if you think about it from that perspective, you're going to be less frightened, because you're thinking about what I can add to this organization, to this conversation, and think of it as a conversation. What can I add to this, rather than what do they think of me? What happens if I get all this wrong? Think about how, and then it doesn't matter so much. You can take that energy away from you and to the other. I'm just going to plug my computer in. All right, let's take 5 minutes, and then we'll keep going. Still got some. Don't go away. I still got some other really important things to share with you. So I'll come back in 5. Okay, just one more minute.
Sorry, do you
there we
mind
go.
if I ask like just a quick question?
Yes, of course, please. I love questions. I
I don't
honestly
know how to get rid of
love it.
this reaction. I'm so sorry.
That again, sorry?
I'm just I have this like reaction thing happening. I don't know how to get rid of it, so please ignore that.
Oh,
Anyways, yeah, I was just about the interview questions because like I wanted to get more clarification, I guess. So
yes.
one of the things I've been trying to do whenever, like, you know, at the end of the interview to ask questions, I kind of want to ask questions to gauge, I guess, more so how the organization is, to see whether not only is it like, am I a good fit for them, but I want to see whether they're a good fit for me. So I'd love to know if there's any kind of like particular questions or tips or ideas that you can suggest in that regard. And if that's I think that's a good idea. If I just want to play around, see how to make sure that it's professional appropriate and they also kind of like it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you. Because it's a really delicate, it's brilliant. The thing that I personally have learned from, I mean, not this, it's answering this question of a few things to unpack with this. So I love this particular question. I think one of the things that, you know, I'm sure that once you start the process, it's sort of like once you're hot, you're hot. So you'll find that you'll probably get a series of interviews, and you probably also find that it'll happen once you start to do really well, you'll get, and then, but if you, what is likely to happen is that you're going to have a few different options, and you want to look at and find out however you can, even before that interview, so you don't waste your time, a bit like dating or something, is that you want to find out as much as you can beforehand. And so just to step back a tiny bit, I talked quite a lot about this in the other, is looking at everything you can find out about them beforehand. But then also, if you're fortunate enough to, which I think for someone like you, just based on what I can even just see about you by in this setting here, is that you're going to have a few people. So watch and have a look at how happy or relaxed they look in what they're doing. You will find, and also, if you do have the good fortune, which I no doubt suspect you will, is that feel how you feel with them as well. Like, is it, do you immediately kind of click with them, or is it kind of like, yeah? And so that can give you some signs about, because ultimately work is about its relationships, and are you a good, you know, do you have what they need? Do you need? So that's some indirect things to find out about. Then you can, and I've seen students do this well. Sorry, a couple of students, only twice have I seen students overstep the mark on this. One was a lawyer who was really driven. It took me a little bit of time because he's great, but he would like come in kind of doing the lawyer thing, and he's gone on to do brilliantly, but we had to just kind of learn how to soften and tone it down. And then only with an older postgraduate student, again, she was just really driven and really good. So think about just cooperation, but also think about how you can ask them things about, you can ask them about what they enjoy about their role. So things, try to get, without being too direct, if you know what I mean, asking them. So for example, somebody was telling me recently, it was an academic position, well, it was maybe about a year ago, saying that they asked some pretty direct questions to the panel about how they, things to do with their roles. And she said that they just literally squirmed in their chairs. Wow. She was like, oh, red flag.
Yeah.
So, and it depends how maybe later on, depending. Yeah, does that help? So
It does,
ask
yeah.
them some positive things, and then again you can see if they really struggle. So for example, you probably get a sense that I love what I do. So if you were to ask me, you know, how do you like, you probably find, yeah, I love what I do. But if you were to get me at a different time, a different place, or whatever, you'd probably find that that there would be some hesitation and some really subtle facial expressions and things that so you're looking for some of those subtle, yeah.
Yeah.
And also when you're doing it, go for some more subtle questions if you don't want to put them offside by by overstepping that sense of like, she's trying to find out about us. Yeah. So I think some gentle things, and it's all, everything is about framing. And so you do it with a lightness. Oh, I'd love to know what you really enjoy about working for PWIC. What are the best things about what are the best things about working with your team? So ask them things that bring them joy. And if you see that they struggle, it's like, yeah, because people that love their work and naturally, or they really enjoy working for that company, they won't pull any faces.
Yeah.
Does that help?
No, definitely. Yeah, I just didn't know whether, because I was thinking about asking those sort of questions, and then like seeing whether they like them asking those sort of questions, which also is a good sign. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think if you just ask some gentle ones that aren't going to that just show that you're trying to find out about the culture, which is really, 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 really important, because it doesn't matter whether you're going to an accounting firm into the same job. Culture is everything. You might be getting paid the same, but it's a really sort of mercenary, top-down sort of, and there's no opportunity to be creative. Yeah, and then you could be in the same role, literally down the road, under a different leadership, a different culture is everything. The beliefs and the values and those subtleties of how. So does that? It's a kind of a very long answer to the question, but it's a really important.
Definitely. No, thank you. I do appreciate that. Yeah, because like I basically want to determine a positive culture, because like if the culture is positive, then you're more likely to be motivated, more likely to, produce better work for the company. So it works both ways, really. It benefits both parties, not just the employee, but also the employer, for there to be a positive culture. So yeah.
Absolutely. And just even if you don't get the chance to ask those questions, or it doesn't feel appropriate, just look at how comfortable they look in what they're doing. So if they, for example, if there's a couple of them are in there and they don't know who's asking the questions, yeah, or one of them rocks up late and doesn't apologize, you know what I mean? So some of that, and watch the little subtle things about how if there's a couple of them in there, how they respond to one another, how are they getting on with because you may be going into that team, that might be your supervisor and your boss. So look for those subtle cues about, do they look comfortable interviewing you? Because if they look comfortable interviewing you, they know who they want. They also know that they've got autonomy to run this interview the way, but if they're all over the place, or if you're being interviewed by two different, that can be interesting. If you're interviewed, so it could be a small company. I remember an experience where they'll play good cop, bad cop. So, watch the dynamic. If you've got two people in an organization, even if they're both the directors of the company, might be a small business or whatever, watch how they communicate with each other as well. So look at those subtle things. Yeah.
Okay.
Are they enjoying themselves? Or do they look like, if they look tired and drudged and stressed, and if they talk about the stress and And if they talk about the drudge of the industry and all that, yeah, maybe in that working for them at that particular time at where they're at might not be the right time. Talk to them in 6 or 12 months' time. You know, they might be working for the NDIS or, you know, whatever, going through a really difficult time in terms of auditing, and maybe that's not the time to go and work for them. But you would like to work with somebody involved in the NDIS, go back another time. Does that make sense?
No,
I'm sort of playing it you've got, but a lot of that subtle stuff will be really, really important to how it all plays out for future. So it's a great, and it is part of success as well, because you are, and it also is about your valuing you, that wherever you go in, then, okay, no experience is a loss, but you want to do your homework. You know, you don't buy a house usually just off the internet from just sitting around. You're going to spend a lot of time with these people or in this organization, just like you do with your home. So you want to spend that time. One lady, I didn't read the whole post, but a professional in my field, just a little bit of a side note, she, I just glanced and I kind of flinched and I was like, probably wouldn't be my approach, but she sort of put a question out there about like finding people that have recently left the company and approaching on LinkedIn and asking them why they left. I was like, whoa, step too far, possibly. Wow. But you'd find out some really telling, you know, so for example, you're going for a student recruitment position in a university and the whole team's suddenly gone. Well, why are they all gone? Yeah. Why are there suddenly seven new roles there? Red flag. And it doesn't necessarily mean it just means that something has happened, but why? So you could ask, I mean, that's enough. You could ask, you know, how's this position come about, or something to do with the nature of the role. Right. Thank you. Love that. Present your postgraduate traits. So ethical conduct is another one that you may not have thought. You know, there is ethical behavior just by being, you know, involved in a university environment, the ability to exercise professional conduct in terms of contributing to workshops, conducting presentations at university. Perhaps you've had to do, you know, ethics for some research work that you've done. They demonstrate, you know, important components. Ethics is enormously important in business, engaging in professional research, analysis, interpretation, reflection. Employers love anything that demonstrates or symbolizes, you know, reflection. I have learned this, which is also kind of can be part of the final stage of an interview response, which I'll talk about in 2 secs. Top skills, communication, I think I've made that really clear. Motivation, commitment can be shown. I think for postgraduates, you know all about commitment, whether you're a domestic student or an international student, because you're fully committed to doing ongoing education. You guys scream commitment. Critical reasoning, and also anybody that's studying in a post-pandemic or during the pandemic, you know, some of you guys, you know, may have had time off or whatever, been here during that period. That shows commitment. It was really, you could talk about, you know, during, you know, being fully committed to my studies. These were the challenges during this time. My course shifted from here. But what I did do was I really enjoyed doing da-da-da-da-da. I relearned how to do da-da-da-da-da. Academic results, employers love them, but it's not everything that they want. Cultural alignment, we've just talked about that, is super duper important. They love, 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 love. I talk a lot about this in the previous workshops that you can access. Any sort of experience, anything, particularly if you're new to Australia and you're kind of trying to make that kind of tricky little, it doesn't last long if you just get out there and do. The great thing is there's volunteering jobs. So prior to the pandemic, 2019, before the pandemic came, around that period, 2019, 2018, the employment market was so buoyant that students couldn't even get voluntary jobs. There was just unbelievable. I'd never experienced a time like that. The great thing is that that whole arena has shifted. There are events, just as an example, just like hospitality is a great way to get experience. Event management is an awesome way because you get project management skills, you get customer service skills, you get leadership skills, you get teamwork skills, and just think of something you love: guitars, football, basketball, and then go and find any organization, whether you're in Orange or Timbuktu, that you can work with. Teamwork, emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence is, there's some great little tests that you can do online. How well do you manage your emotions? How well do you understand your emotions? But also being able to observe the emotions and work with the emotions of others as well. Placement, extracurricular activity. Yes, it's, as a previous student says, they don't necessarily, just want to hear it when they ask you who you are. They don't want to necessarily know about the soccer club, but it can be the final part of your spiel about what you do, with the local soccer club. PPPP, so punctuality. Punctuality in a online environment really means, it doesn't mean getting in there 5 minutes beforehand. I would say for the first time, like going back into Teams, particularly if you use different Teams and you've used Teams or Zoom for SCU, and maybe you do something for someone else and then you've got your own Zoom account. I speak from experience with this. It is the day that Zoom wants to upgrade, and the upgrade takes 10 minutes. You've got to shut your computer down. Bye-bye, interview. Preparedness, knowing, do as much research as you can possibly can about the organisation beforehand. Positive attitude and enthusiasm. So if you've had negative experiences, which is really normal, both with your studies or adjusting to Australia or family or whatever it is, it's normal. Put it aside. If it's relevant, talk about how you've overcome it and what you've learned from it. So perhaps you've had an illness that gave you time out of the workforce. Don't spend a lot of time talking about, illness is horrendous for anybody, but talk about, what the learning from that was. So there was a period of time due to ill health, I was out of the workforce. What I learned about that was, X, Y, Z. And then only you talk about it if it's relevant, it comes up, it's relevant for the role, project, positive. Remember to close. So super duper important, whether you're doing a presentation, working on something, in a group, whatever, close with a positive eye contact, firm handshake if you're here. Use the interviewer's name. Small talk, super duper duper important. I was just listening to something really recently just about that reminder in the online environment. So find familiarities, like you get in there and then you're like, hey, how's your day going? Where are you at? What's the weather like in Sydney today? Oh, I used to live in Sydney, or I'm traveling to Victoria in, February next year. Just find those points of positive visualization. This is actually, this is a bit of a ding-a-ling-a-ling. I love, as you probably gathered, because this is the second time I mention it, there's a TED talk by Amy Cuddy about body language. Amy Cuddy, I think it's Cuddy like that. But there's actually something called what we call power poses. I've done them myself. And I've shared them with other students, and my fondest memory of sharing it, true story, barista, having coffee, and we were chatting, and she said, I'm going for a job interview. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. What are you doing? She said, I'm going into real estate. And I was like, oh, that's great. And I said to her, oh, can you do something for me? I said, before you go in there, I want you to do a power pose. You can watch the and what it actually does is it changes something in your physical being that demonstrates greater confidence. And so she did it, And she goes, and I didn't see her immediately afterwards. I saw her a short period of time afterwards. And she goes, oh my God, I did the power pose. And it worked. I was like, yes, it does work. So beforehand, go into your bathroom if you face to face. I've actually done it in the bathrooms somewhere, and you just rock it. Yeah, imagine you dancing, and it actually physically changes. And I love it because the science is there. The other things that's really helpful, the beginning of this session, Alison and I were talking, she was sharing about nerves. I think one of the things that I have found one of the most helpful things is I remember once going in that same time actually and I realized that actually I was only going into an interview with 2 people, and really, really successful people. And I thought of Nicole Kidman, and I don't necessarily like Nicole Kidman. I don't like her as an actor. But what I love, and deeply admire about her is that she fails all the time in front of millions and millions of people. She does a bad movie. And the rest of us mere mortals, we're afraid to fail in front of 4 people, 100 people, 150 people, 200 people. Most of us probably aren't going to be presenting to more than 200 people in our lives. But watch this space. You guys will be out there after this. And so I found that when I had that thought, it was like, oh, it doesn't really, like, yeah, it's important, and it would be really upsetting if I don't get it, but it's not much to lose. And so what that did for me, it took the power out of it. And it was like, oh, actually, I'm just having a conversation with a couple of people. So, but the point is that really, really successful people, they have very strong egos, and great, because you think about politicians and how much politicians, for example, they get criticized all the time. And again, the rest of us, are sensitive about, what the impression is. So most of us, that's why only certain people get into politics. But you think about how much hate they get on a day-to-day basis, and they just get up, they believe in what they do, and they have, again, there's different types of personalities, but you want to think about someone like, think about the Dalai Lama, who knows exactly who he is, what his purpose is, what his mission is, what his vision is, and but also has humility. And then when you have humility, like Aylin is probably a really good example of that, where you can be curious, but also okay with who you are. Then you can go in there and think about how you can contribute. And then you will find that if they're going to see who you are more naturally if you are yourself, and they'll either like you or you won't. And that's okay, because sometimes rejection is a blessing, and you'll be better off somewhere else. So try not to take too much of it too personally. It's like, oh, I remember this friend of mine many years ago. She was out dating, and she just got rejected after rejection. Actually, in fact, I saw it with the guy that went to the pancake shop, and both of them just, both in this dating case and in this other case, they just let rejection go, and they just kept going. And shortly after, like, she just went in the dating case, she knew exactly what she wanted, and then happily married still to this day to the guy. And that student just went on, started off at the pancake shop. He got rejected so many times, but then he got the pancake shop, and then he was off on his way. Research. Yeah, check out the Zooms. Oh, this is a ding-a-ling-a-ling. This is a really tricky one. All I would suggest, I actually had a personal experience a few years ago where I got somebody to come and meet me in the Teams meeting. Camera was all working, and then got in there, and so it didn't work. But I would say get somebody, family, friend, mentor, colleague, anyone to come in and check everything for you. You can only do the best that you can. Check your sound, your camera, your lightings, review the selection criteria, what will you wear, practice, 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 practice. Okay, ways to stand out. We've talked a lot about this, about being memorable for the right reasons, your points of difference, your uniqueness. And your uniqueness will come by you being yourself and showing enthusiasm. And knowing what makes you special will be your future, essentially. Art of storytelling, they love stories and think of it as a conversation. What's your why? I think I've kind of really talked to this point, but here is a real ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling. Use what I do and would still do to this day if I was, going for a job interview today or tomorrow. I would get a piece of paper, big piece of cardboard, and I would put examples. You want to give them evidence. So you've previously worked in hospitality. You don't want to talk about all the tasks you did in hospitality. You want to talk about all the results of that you moved into a supervisory position. You managed a difficult customer and managed to get great feedback. You worked with people from a variety of different backgrounds and therefore learnt the value of multicultural communities and multicultural engagement, etc. So you want to look at all of the so you start off with a situation. So the situation is when I worked at McDonald's, or when I worked at Joe Blow's Cafe, or when I was studying at SCU, or in my previous study at the University of Victoria, or when I was working for my family business, or when I was working in my country of origin for a local company. Then what task I was required to do XYZ, don't spend a lot of time on it. Then this happened, so I had a problem with a customer. I was required to get up and do a presentation. I was required to support a staff member. Why they, as Alan said about I had a colleague say perhaps that I was required to really listen to a colleague that was going through a mental health challenge. What actions did you take? I realized that the situation, that my colleague was really vulnerable in that moment. I offered some additional services, or I just listened and hung out with them for the rest of the shift. And then I drove, then I offered to drive her home afterwards, and we've now become, and then the result, we're now friends, or I found out that, she was able to solve those problems that she had and is doing really well now. So they don't have to be like these super duper incredible, when I got my GPA of 7 out of 7. It's about the evidence of the achievements. It could be when I was working for my father's furniture business. He wasn't really good at, wasn't really good at websites. And so I helped create a website for him. And then we were able to put a booking system on there, and he's now got people ordering furniture online. I mean, that's a big example, but it might be something smaller. When I was working in aged care, it's not even small, that's still a big one. Working in aged care, I had a client that I worked with every day, and she was feeling vulnerable, frightened, whatever. She was having trouble accessing one of the drawers, so I managed to put something underneath it so that she could use it. And then she really thanked me. She was really really happy and said nobody had taken the time to fix that for me. It's really and if you think about how you can contribute, it's those little things that we do for people in our work that make that difference. But most importantly here is the results of what you have done. And it doesn't have to be that you've saved the planet or you became employee of the month. And also the learning. And I think what was beautiful, I will reflect again on Aylin's point about what you have learned. And so if it was a situation where you're counseling somebody or listening to somebody, what we learned is that just, by listening and spending time with somebody, that is more important to somebody's well-being than necessarily having all the right answers for them. So that's this here is what you're going to be essentially doing in your cover letter as well, because you're going to find out this information from the job advertisement. And when they're coming to interview you, they're going to ask you things like, tell me about the time you solved a customer's problem. Tell me about your experience using Microsoft Teams. Tell me your experience about doing a marketing plan. Tell me about how good you are at managing your time. Tell me how you solve problems. Tell me what your greatest strengths are. Even with your strengths, you could give an example. So I'm really good at helping others. An example of this was when I was working in aged care. This is what I did. So thinking about, tell me about yourself, think about your past, your present, and your future. That can be a nice, easy structure for you. So what are the most relevant skills? And one of the previous speakers, shared that value of looking at, I think it was Etia gave us that example of when she was employing people. We want, the word here is relevant. So relevant to the role, and if it can't be relevant, as we were talking about, then you want to try to make it as relevant as you can, because sometimes we're in a place where we're trying to make, we're not quite yet where we want to go, and that's where we need to draw on those transferable. Present, what do I want to do to work for this employer? Hint, not just the money to pay the rent. And then future, where am I heading? You don't have to give them your 5-year plan, etc. But how would I like to be contributing in an ongoing basis? Here's a really good, I'd take a screenshot of this. I'm going to send you guys through the PowerPoints from all the weeks. We'll gather up all the email addresses. But when you're putting, what can often happen when you're trying to prepare for an interview or trying to do your cover letter or your resume, it's like, I don't know, what have I done? Also talk to your family and your friends. Grandmas are the best. They always remember, or if you don't have a grandma, your partner or your auntie or uncle, your parents, your partner, those people closest to you that are most proud of, they'll remember those achievements. You can practice via the SCU Careers Centre. This session is brought to you by the Postgraduate Association, and I work in conjunction with them and also as a conduit between, as a facilitator between them and also the SCU Careers team. So the SCU Careers team they have consultants, ongoing consultants, career development consultants based on all the campuses. They have a ton of really useful stuff. You'll probably see they offer workshops and other things consistently. I'll meet some of you guys, the MIT students, anybody who's doing business of any form, IT, accounting. I'll come across you guys, and then probably perhaps some of you guys that will do electives. You can elect to do professional development in the workplace if you've got a postgraduate unit, even psychology if you want to do professional development for the workplace as a postgraduate. I think it's called business professional development. That's a great unit, because if you've made the effort to come to this as some sort of interest or intrigue, we do leadership stuff, we do emotional intelligence, we do career planning. It's a great unit, fabulous unit. But if none of that happens, somebody was talking about alumni, you can use the SCU Careers team for another 2 years after you graduate. Ding-a-ling-a-ling. Many students don't know that. Last week I talked about LinkedIn. Join the SCU alumni group on LinkedIn. The interview team, they do mock interviews. I'm going to reach out to Aileen to make an appointment together to have a one-on-one chat. I'm around next few weeks. I've got some availability over the next couple of weeks. I'll have a chat to Alison about how to get that information out to you guys. Please just type something in there if you want me just to approach you directly for an appointment. So I do 1 hour appointments. I don't know, it varies each term. I usually do about 5, just with people, one-on-one coaching, just to talk about specific things. Oh yeah, beautiful. Yeah, happy to do that. And in those sessions, I just do it with whatever is the most, whatever you want to talk about, basically. And so we do cover letters, resumes, career planning, transitioning through whatever that is. we'll send it through a big announcement there. I think that's it, but I've got plenty of time. So anybody got any specific, yeah, so that'll come out, but if anybody, I'll write to you, Aylin, but if anybody else wants to just shoot me an email, backgroundcareers@gmail.com. That's my business email here. As I said, I'll probably come across a few of you guys under Beck Brown over here. You'll come across me as Rebecca Brown through the faculty of business, but we may or may not, our paths may or may not cross. Rebecca, you're heading off to an interview. Is there anything, and I'll go through each of you guys, is there anything that struck for you that you'd like me to talk, particularly because you're going for an interview? I would think examples, demonstrating, show the full suite of who you are. So particularly, what's the same with any profession, so showing those soft skills, the technical skills, a little bit of, you know, your personality, but also any evidence of experience. Is there anything you need in preparation?
I'm just going to talk because it's easier than typing.
Please do. I love hearing voices. Thank you. No, not those kind of voices.
Don't think there's anything I need. Like, I've already gone down, like, written down examples and situations that I've been in. I think it was just, I just need a refresher and anything I could take into it. But yeah, no, it's all been great. Thank you.
Been helpful?
Yeah.
And do you know what the format is? Is it online?
I've got one in person and then I've got two on Zoom.
Oh, for the same company?
Oh no, so for the masters I've got Western Sydney's in person, then I've got Newcastle Uni and La Trobe Uni, and they're both online.
You're fabulous. Oh my goodness. So just other little quick tips with the face-to-face. Just particularly when you're going to like a university or to a big setting, heaps of time, because invariably it's going to be down a rabbit hole. Like you just wouldn't believe. They just, when you're going for recruitment in a place, it always just seems to be in the most obscure place. So plenty of timing in the parking, all that stuff. I would just leave heaps and heaps and heaps of time, because then you just don't want to go in there hot and flapping through the door or anything like that. Also, just remember all those decision influences along the way. So the receptionist, the people on the lift, anybody else in that office space, just give them big smiles. So all of that extra stuff. Think about the face-to-face, of course, all your body language. If they offer you a glass of water, just say yes, even if you don't really want it. So then you've got it. You might find that you want it. And then it's also culturally, you know, some different cultures, you know, it's impolite. So just say yes to the water if they offer you one. I can't think of anything else. Oh, thank them, of course. Say thank you. Thank you for your time. Looking forward to hearing from you. All that stuff. Do the follow-up.
Yep.
And definitely do the
Okay.
I want to. It totally changes. And also it just shifts. Like I'm not surprised that there's science, because it just shifts how you feel. It's like, woo, got this. Yeah. And I'm excited that you've got, so that stuff that I was previously talking about, you can kind of, particularly if you're hot, you can look at that subtle stuff about, you know, because it's going to come down to, you might have two and you're like, but I liked how she said that, and I think I feel more comfy with them. Think about what I have learned both personally and professionally is that there's some subtle messages that you get So take your time with making any decisions. Listen to the quieter voice rather than the that
Yeah.
one. There's always there's a gentle little message that gets said, like this is going to be great, or just be careful of that. So looking at that quieter voice, because we often overshadow it with fear, and then usually fear just goes, well, I've got to accept this because they're not going to come back to me. And then there's another voice that's going, actually, it's going to be okay if I just chill. That other role will come through. So listen to start to, that's a real practice, probably a whole nother session. I think that's the, have a bit of a scoot around if you get a chance, like you're going onto campus.
Yeah.
Just have if you can go and see, if you've got time, look at how they present themselves, like, like flats versus heels and all that sort of stuff. The interesting thing about the whole post-pandemic thing, I was even watching like the presenter, like I was watching the presenter on the ABC the other night. I love how they spin around the side. Until the pandemic, they never had sneakers on. And not that you want to go to a job interview with sneakers on, but certainly they're kind of the whole high heel thing changed. Certainly I got a lot of heels. Got a lot of heels in the cupboard that are not getting the work out post-pandemic. They'll be back. So that stuff. This is a little bit, just set your settings on, I'm a little bit, I take this one with a grain of salt to see what your style is. You can have a look at, if they give you the names of who's going to interview you, you can go and have then you can have a little stalk of them on LinkedIn, but just set your privacy settings.
Yeah.
I'm still dabbling with the when to connect with people. Do you connect beforehand? It's dicey. And then do you chat, so I won't give you any fixed opinions on all of that. But what I would say is check your style. Like, some people like to know as much as they can about the interviewer before they go in. Sometimes that can actually intimidate you if you're like, oh my God, they were once working for the UN. Yeah. And that could affect you psychologically. So just check yourself in about how you feel about that. Sometimes it can be helpful. It's a bit like, and people just have different styles. It's a bit like, somebody like changing your seat on the plane. I was on a plane the other day recently, and someone's like, oh, you can move seats. And I was like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to mess with the universe. Just check in what feels best with yourself around that. But it can be helpful, but you just want to be, you just think about just what will be helpful for yourself. But scope, as much as I would absolutely suggest this with all of those, is scope anything that you can, projects that that team might be working on, anything you can see on Facebook, Instagram, anything on the socials, anything that's going on there. Think about original and real ideas about why you want to work for that uni versus that one, or whatever it is. So think of the things that really, not what you think they want to hear, but think about why you do. You're obviously like hot property as a new grad. Why is it that I really want to work there? Because then you can talk from your heart rather than, and they will feel that talking from your heart more than because you guys are the Sandstone University or whatever it is. Yeah. So think about why it was you really, then it's a lot easier and a lot more natural, and they'll connect to that naturalness more so than you're just trying to say all the right things. They can see through all of that, because you remember they're kind of be pretty attuned to all of those things. Nice. I'm excited. I can't wait. Speaking of follow-up, I will be sending a little message to see how that all went. Anybody else? Natalia, Janet, anything that you guys would like me to share about, anything coming up, anything making you still anxious, anything else you'd like me to mention?
Oh, yes, Beck. Can I just ask you for your advice? I've been through a few interviews, and on reflection, I don't do well in all of them. Like this like lots like oh, I don't know how to say that. Like I tried preparing, but it just doesn't come out.
Yes, is that you, Janet?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, great. Okay, so if you're open to it,
Yes.
I'll shoot you, and
Well,
let's have a session. Let's get in there, turn your camera on, and let me see because this doesn't happen a lot, but what I do find is that, well, here's the great news: it can be fixed. The other great news that if you're getting lots of interviews, you're doing brilliantly because you're actually getting through 90% of the process. So you're down to that 10%. So there's obviously something that you're doing or saying. And the only way to find out what that is getting someone like me to come in. But in a gentle way. Because, and yeah, that's what I would say. Because here's an example, I was working with an incredible professional who's actually a colleague, but was shifting, not a colleague no longer, but was going through the process and brilliant at what she does. And she kept getting interviews. And there was something that she was worried about. It was a particular gap that she felt that she didn't have in there. And as this period of time went on, she went through the initial stage of not getting the interviews. Then she worked through all of that and then was getting the interviews. Then she was getting the interviews and something kept happening. And what I noticed in the conversations that we'd have, we'd chat face-to-face, chat online, chat on the phone, or chat via text, she kept bringing up something that she didn't have. And this is something that seems to be a real thing, is that back to what I said at the very beginning. Once we talked in detail and shifted her mindset about that thing that she kept taking in there, which was, in her case, she was missing some particular research that she felt was something that they valued. So she kept carrying that into every interview. But in fact, what I was eventually able to sort of highlight to her, and not because I was trying to do it, but just as a friend, as a buddy, I just kept saying, hey, did you notice that every time this comes up, you keep saying this? And she's like, oh. And I was like, I wonder if you're carrying that into every interview. And guess what? She stopped doing it. Guess what happened? Got a job. So it's the same with that young guy that I was talking about that hadn't finished his degree. So sometimes it can just be something, that we haven't had enough time working in a particular field, or it's a particular, like sometimes it can be like a particular software. Or there's a guy that I'm working with that I know, and this often happens, is that you've been in a profession for a while and then the industry changes and then they feel out of date, and then they feel that that's the thing that's going to catch them up. And so, does that make sense? And I have no idea what it could be, but I would be honoured to work with you on that.
How would that work? Do I just email you for the details?
I'll just shoot you an email and we'll just find a time. And if you're open to it, let's just come in and have a chat about what you've been doing, what you've been going for, and then you just play around for now, see what it looks like.
It sounds good.
Beautiful. Janet sorted. Francis, Natalia, Etcha, Aylin, we're going to meet. Anything that you guys still, Rebecca, are you all sorted? Francis, any of you guys have anything else that you guys specifically need, or something that's still bothering you? Not bothering you, but just like, yeah, I wanted to talk about that, and I'm still worrying about, oh, one thing that's super duper fabulous, and it's legal, is, and it's not medicinal marijuana, it's Rescue Remedy. Rescue Remedy is in a little yellow bottle. You can buy it in Woolies. There's two forms. There's there's lozenges, and then there's also the you put it under your tongue. Now the under the tongue one's got a tiny bit of brandy on it, so you might want to brush your teeth, like really minute. I don't know what the percentage is. It's been around for decades, and it just takes the edge off. It's legal. There's nothing sinister or it's herbs. It doesn't, as far as I know, it doesn't clash with any medications. It's a really mild, it's really good for exams. They have lozenges in Woolies. It's been in Woolies now for about, I don't know, maybe 5-10 years. But the formula's been around for about 20 years. It is brilliant for just taking you to that, you know, if you have really bad anxiety about going to an interview, setting a timer and just sitting quiet, like do the power poses, but before that, just sitting quietly, setting a timer for a couple of minutes and literally just sit and be present. And that will actually bring you back to the present moment. Drink plenty of water, get a good night's sleep, really hard, you know, if you're anxious about something, but feeling really well rested. Also eating properly the night before. So again, you know, when we're anxious, you know, some people drink alcohol or smoke cigarettes or whatever, eat bad food. Don't do that. Nothing excessively before. Eat food that you enjoy. Make sure you get plenty of rest as best you can, and just so you can feel as refreshed as possible. Keep it psychologically as low, you know, just think about as much as you can. I'm going to give it my best shot. I'm going to be who I am, and if they love me, then that's fabulous. If they don't, I'll go and find someone else. sounds like dating, but you know what I mean? So, and then, and just remember that, they've asked you to do that interview, so they believe that you are suitable for the job. So you just have to remind them how fabulous you are. That sounds easy to me. Anything else? But some of those subtle things, you know, about eating and sleeping, and same for like, it's hard before an exam and all that sort of stuff, but they do, it's not the day that you want to wake up feeling like, you know, you've gone out to a festival all night long. Anything else? Oh, yes. Gopen Santh. I'll also send you an email if you wanted to have a chat to talk through, save you going through the hours of the recordings. Happy to chat to you. We can do one-on-one to talk about the pathways, like you put in that email, for part-time work. It can be, and we'll talk about just where you're located, what other experience you have, that sort of stuff that will contribute to that. So happy to do that. Let me just take a screenshot of who's here. Not a screenshot of myself. There we go. Who was the other one? Oh, Francis, is there anything that you need? And Natalia, anything that you guys need? Fabulous. I'm so stoked to have so many of you guys live face to face, because we get last week we had about 25 enrollments. We're only about 4 here, and it just thank you so much. I really thank you. I've really appreciated you being here live, because also just if people are listening at home, it just makes it more enjoyable than me just kind of going next slide. They're probably not going to listen to the whole thing. So I really appreciate the contribution and things you've shared with me in here. I'm going to send out the emails. Those of you guys that I said I don't email directly, stand by. I'll send out some options of times to go through that stuff. And don't forget the SCU careers team for later on. These guys are amazing. They've got consultants on the campus all the time. they're really, really good at doing, they do the mock interviews. You can actually go on to, I know some of you guys aren't necessarily near the campuses, but they can do mock interviews with you online. They've also got, if you missed the resume session last week, they've also got amazing samples. They've got industry related ones that they've done. And that's really, 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 it's a ding-a-ling-a-ling from last week. Super duper important, because a lot of many recruiters just use automatic tracking systems through Indeed, Jora, Seek. And what that means is if you've got fancy formatting in there, headings it doesn't like, page breaks, you're not getting to the even for them to look at it stage. And that breaks my heart, because we've got 4.5% unemployment or something. And I wonder how many people in our country, it just literally breaks my heart, how many people could be at home thinking that they're not of value to an employer just because a machine doesn't like them because they put fancy formatting in. If they put fancy formatting in, it probably means they're trying. So I find that absolutely devastating, that it's a machine that's, and also when we get rejected, it doesn't matter whether it's a machine that rejects us or a human being. We just assume it's a human. So just also keep that in mind. If you get rejected, your application gets rejected, doesn't matter whether you're going for a position as a CEO, it's likely to be a machine in the first instance. So please, thank you. Yes, let me, yeah, I think I've got all your details. That's beautiful. Thank you. So that's super duper important. Here's another little fabulous tip, just again, in case you don't, I don't see you again. Resume Worded, this is one of my favorite tips of all. If you look up Resume Worded, it's a free resume. You can drop your resume in there. You can drop it in there 12 times without paying for it. And don't fall off your chair and die with shame when you put it in there. I know many professionals, even professionals in the game, that have dropped their own resumes in there and nearly died of fright. It is brilliant because it tells you where you've made mistakes in your resume. So you can actually go back and then you can make those changes, drop it back in there. If you get it up to 85% on there, you're laughing. So that is one of my favorite. Then you can also get, there's some free resume review services. There's the XU Careers team, they'll review your resume, but I would also use, most important, well, not equally importantly, you want to use Human Beings. Career One, they do, I think it's just www.career1. They get a human being for free and a computer. You want a human being and a computer, and Resume Worded. If you did Resume Worded, Career One, a human being and a computer, you'll find things will change. Any other questions? Anything else that you'd like? Oh, and just have a listen. I said, fold the washing, listen to the last couple of weeks. And don't forget, you're amazing. If nobody tells you today, I think you're amazing. I do. I genuinely do, because I know that you guys come here is that you want it and you got something to offer. And yeah, it's just doing it. All right. Anything else I can help you with? All right, I'll see some of you guys on email for some follow-up appointments, and take good care. We'll be back. We'll be back next year now, other than the one-on-ones. But in the meantime, if say for you, Rebecca, but I think you've got 3 a bit home free, but for anyone else, oh yes, Aylin.
In the future, if you want to contact you, how should we do it?
Yes, so my email address is, I'll just pop it in again here.
So we can just email you and then set up.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, if it falls out of, like, I'm going to run some sessions with people over the next couple of weeks, but I've been working with the Postgraduate Association for a couple of years. So if you've worked with me and then you want to work with me again, it's fine. Just email me on that one, or it doesn't really matter. This is my SCU one. It's just that I use this one because I'm a consultant, but I don't think it doesn't really matter. Whichever's easier for you, it's all. That's my SCU one. Yeah, so if like it's just all lowercase. Either one of those, whatever. But I'll actually email the three of you guys directly that want, but anybody else, yeah, needs any help. Anyone that's listening at home, happy to help. Okay, take care. It's Friday. What's everybody doing really quickly? What's everyone doing for the weekend? Anything fun?
Assignment.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that old chestnut.
Yeah, Simon do Sunday, so that's my weekend plans.
Yeah. So, yeah. Well, I guess we are at that. We're in, where are we? We're week 3. Yeah. I'm very pleased. Well, of course you guys, because you're the conscientious ones, interview prep. So awesome, Rebecca, get a big piece of, the thing that I find most helpful is get a big piece of A4 paper and then just draw some bubbles, you know, around all my examples of my communication skills and everything I've done in my study and everything I've done in my volunteering and everything I've done in my placement and everything I've done in my part-time job and everything I've done working with teams, everything I've done related to whatever's related to the role. So think about all those keywords in the interview. So in the job ad, you know, all my research examples. If you've gone for job university, you probably had to do selection criteria. So just make sure you're super comfy with all of that. And remember to smile. And that might seem really funny, but you will be memorable by being, by honestly looking really happy to be there. Because so often, it's not that people aren't happy to want to spend an interview, do they? But just show it, that enthusiasm. Just with that story that I said, for the first, like I heard it once and I'm like, yeah, and I told everybody, and then I heard it again, I'm like, yes, of course, enthusiasm. All right, take care, everybody. See you soon. Bye. Enjoy those assignments. Don't forget to have fun. Bye. Bye.